What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, life stuff. The last few weeks have not been very great, and it looks like we'll have a few more difficult weeks, and then we'll see what happens. Probably difficulter weeks. I haven't been sleeping well, I've been working on my days off, which, even in small amounts, it prevents you from getting in to anything, and it also occupies your entire mind for the day. If a day is a blank sheet of paper, if any amount of career work is introduced to it, it's not like a little amount of ink, the entire page is covered in ink. And as usual, it's the way things go. If something is taken from you or you are volunteered to volunteer something, that's okay, but if you volunteer it back, that's a problem. But it got me thinking about security, because to me, security, feeling secure, is one of the most important, coveted feelings you can have. And I realized it's hard to feel secure when you know you can't rely on people. And that's one way of phrasing it, which is correct with one flavor, but another way of phrasing the same thing with a different but more correct flavor is nobody having your back. Knowing if something goes wrong, people will not support you. And there's something in this we'll need to think about. Realistically, even if you do have people who have your back, that does nothing to make you any less powerless against the world once it has decided now is the time to fuck you. But you do feel a lot better. It's a fantasy, you can't need it. You can't plan with it in mind, even if you do feel that way. But that's a desire that is difficult to do away with. Anyway, the primary topic of this video is God, gods, the gods, our gods, knowing them, and a bunch of other stuff. I don't know how to organize this, so let's go in swinging. I think higher and lower beings are in the same, or at least similar, circumstances we are. I was thinking about that nausea shit from earlier this week. I think gods need to contend with death too, as in they are not omnipotent. I'm beginning to think death is a big cliff that is as frightening and confounding to all aboves and all belows as it is to us. If there is something beyond death, then it is totally alien to anything and everything on this side of the fence. As in, why do you feel forsaken when you have these dreadful moments and brushes with death? I don't think it's because faith or higher powers are not real. Rather, you are getting dangerously close to a barrier your gods both, or maybe either, can't or won't follow you past. You are forsaken in these moments. And that makes you realize faith is this thing you choose, and it has all these implications on this side of the fence, but it's not enough. In this particular dreadful sphere, we are all the same. We are all powerless. We are all confused. We are all scared. And that puts faith into a different perspective. We've been talking about this for years, but the idea that gods and humans are not in a state of higher and lower quotes, or master and follower, but rather some fucky-wucky symbiosis. In other words, we are here for our gods as much as our gods are here for us. It is a form of symbiosis, but it's more like clinging to one another in fear of this inevitability. And this is another thing. People talk about our existing being a means by which the universe can know itself. I don't think that's the case at all. Or at least not the way they say it. I think we are lived reflections of our gods and their interests or realms of concern. For a long time now, we've talked about Venus, we've talked about anime god, we've talked about Hecate, and I've been wondering why she appears in so many different forms. Does she have some great plan, or all these many fleshed out aspects of an omnipotent being, each tailored to a particular purpose? I'm beginning to think not. I think she's trying to figure this shit out as much as we are. She's experimenting with realms of concern and presentations. The exact same way you do. Experimenting both to try to figure something out or to pursue, that's another freaky theory. Maybe gods have their own forms of righteousness or these instincts we talk about. Doing things because you feel on some level this is the thing you need to be doing, even though in the end it'll resolve nothing. Chains up and down. And maybe that's part of the symbiosis. Mutually representing different things for one another in an effort to figure out or cover as much ground as possible. Mixed with that weird clinging thing. We've talked about this before, but I believe there are many, many, many different entities above us, and probably below us too. But why does our God consistently show up with feminine energy, feminine forms? I'm wondering if it has everything to do with wanting to appeal, taking these forms or using these presentations to appeal, or maybe possessing that form or that energy originally, but then finding the best place to fit itself. And I think that would explain a lot about this natural grouping we have clumped together in here. My point in this being, the same way we domesticate animals and to grow attached to them, or even now with AI, these, or quotes AI, these lesser intelligences that, despite, again, quotes, not being on our level, we still use, and in some cases we do develop attachments to, though I have had a harder time with that, unfortunately, at least for now. Maybe that is similar to our symbiosis with our gods. We are, well, they're incomprehensible to us, or only partially comprehensible to us, to the same degree to which a dog is somewhat, only somewhat, comprehensible to us. You recognize that soul core is the same, but the levels and experiences are different. Nonetheless, we symbio effectively toward good ends. I think about heraldry and what animals come to represent for us. And Eternalized is a great channel, and I normally don't like those sorts of channels, but that dude does it so well. The Psychology of Animals video, the ways these quotes lower minds help us understand ourselves or represent different aspects of ourselves. Maybe that is what's going on with our gods. As in, let's think about the constitution of this clump we have here. for the most part, odd straight dudes, odd straight women, and odd lesbians. That smells to me like a sort of feminine entity trying to understand this alternative feminine in a heterosexual and in a homosexual fashion, and in relation to the masculine, or the alternative, or an alternative masculine. This thing is trying to figure itself out, and we are expressions of it trying to figure itself out. In other words, we aren't aspects of the universe knowing itself. We are aspects of one divinity trying and failing to come up with a specific effective way to be, but it has the vibe, general vibe down. But that's another thing. Are we elements of it, as in created by it, or are we things adapted to it or selected by it? I guess in the end, that doesn't really matter. Which is, again, freaky. Realizing faith, even if you trust it, choose it, and even if it does have some effect here, if it does, it still has no effect in the end. And maybe that's something it wants us to know. To make this choice of faith matter more, but again, it doesn't matter. But it kind of does. Anyway, I think once either you've been properly selected, or you realize the way you were made and why, you can start to get to know your God, your divinity, via reflection. Because you, or at least what makes anything worth being of you, is a projection of some aspect of it. You think what you're supposed to think, both because it's reflecting the divinity you're under, and also the realm of concern you are here to mine, to figure things out. Because I think that's another thing. I'm wondering if these divinities, they throw us at the wall, at the problem of death, the same way we throw animals at it, robots at it, specifically AI. We recognize AI as a lower intelligence, but people are still using it to try to learn things that haven't been known. And I'm strongly willing to bet there is a sexual aspect to this. Because while there are straight women in this little cult, we're a very straight dude and lesbian bunch. Think about Christians for a moment. There's been this resurgence of the alpha male Christian thing, but when you really look at and deal with Christians, the most dedicated Christians tend to be women. And when they talk about their relationship with God, it's a very heteronormative way of interacting with the divine. Do you ever notice that? The way lots of these women treat God like their boyfriend? And I'm not judging. I get it. I bring this up because I think there's a point to this. We can develop a better sense of what we are and where we are in relation to everything when we look at our connections and dependencies. And, well, what I mean by that is you can learn about yourself by merit of your being chosen by this other thing. And the inverse is true too. And you can learn even more by looking laterally on this plane I think we're trained to view this reality that we can see and comprehend both as the only one and also really the only one we should be thinking about, the only one that really constructs anything, when in reality, I think this plane is important, but you need to look at the entire system as if it were this 3D thing. This is one layer. If you look side to side, everything will appear to be connected or disconnected, but it's such a limited view when in reality what you're doing or what you should be doing is looking not at the way, let's say, threads go across the lens you live on, like under a microscope. Instead, you should be looking at it as a way to track threads that are going through it. And try to look at connections that way. As in, things that would, if you're looking only side to side laterally, flat plane, things that would appear not to be connected, they are connected, but you'll tell yourself or convince yourself they aren't because they don't appear to be connected by looking at it on this horizontal plane. They are connected by this series of strings moving up and down through the lens. Those connections you feel, they are real, but they are connected in ways you are trained not to look for or to repress or to discount, because the way in which you know them does not translate onto this plane straight. One of the ways to know your God is to pay attention to these connections that you know to be connections but don't appear to you in any typical way to be connections. And that also goes a long way in explaining why people are so confusing and fucked up. We assume we share the experience, or our universal shared experience is existing on this plane. And that's not... It is, in fact, a characteristic we share, but it's not the connection that matters. The connections that matter are the ones that separate us as they travel up and down through. In other words, the differences you feel between you and other people, or other sorts of people, are real, and it's because they are other sorts of people chosen by their own divinities, or perhaps not chosen by divinities. As humans, we are based in difference, not in similarity. At least when you're going all across the board. But that does make me think about what our reality is, or what we are in all this. For ourselves, I mean. And I think this is important too, because if we can understand this, then we'll have a much better idea of the situation our God lives in. In terms of things that, quote, matter, it's fucked up realizing faith is not one of the things that, quotes, matters. It's there, and you may have the opportunity to choose it. I have. It's an important component in my life, but it's not the solution. It's not the salvation. It's truer every day. This thing we live in is not a world, a universe of infinite possibility. All this complicated, incomprehensible shit, and in reality, it's a wasteland. And ultimately, you're left in this wasteland with only two truths. Occasionally, there are curiosities, threads to pull. But you know, pulling on these threads will accomplish nothing. Because, and this is a fucked up thing, back to death for a moment, if there is any truth to be had, it seems like the only truth, as above and so below, is that death is this fucked up, scary, confusing thing that is inevitable. And I don't mean that in a mortal, literal life and death sense. I mean this in as ultimate and grand a sense as I can mean it. You exist at all because this void is here. And here's a thought that just crossed my mind that I hadn't considered before. Is the void the thing you should be worshipping or most concerned with? It's fucked up. This God's shit. We love our divinities, we love our mysticism, but is all of this stuff diversion? Or, if it's not strictly diversion, are they all tools in service of understanding this great void, this great, impassable, for now, cliff? There is no, we will say it again, there is no solution and no salvation on this side of things. There is no solution that can be known, there is no salvation that can be known. If you want truth and resolution, it's the void. But that's not a certainty. It's important because it's the only thing that cannot be known. That's what's so unnerving about all this. Oh, and that's another thing. Why is the world so confused and angry and awful? It's probably because the gods are confused and angry and awful. And why are we all together, up and down, confused and angry and awful? Because on some level there's an awareness that all that is, I am, is a wasteland. Nothing here matters. And when I say matters, I mean nothing at all here can penetrate this void. There's never a situation in which you can feel certain and secure in your knowledge and in your life, because there is something unknowable and unbeatable out there, and it's coming for you. And that's enough to drive anybody crazy. Mortal or quotes immortal. And maybe that's another reason to fraternize with your God, because he, she, or it is in as fucked up a spot as you are, just on a different scale of knowing it. Different scale of knowing it, different ability to do things, same ultimate, utter powerlessness. That was a huge tangent. Back to the wasteland. There are threads you can pull on, but you know, even before you pull on them, they don't really matter, because they'll do nothing about or to the void. Yet, with some of them, you feel compelled, or maybe not compelled, you want to pull on them. Not because you think they'll do anything, or maybe you want to think they'll do something, but you know they won't. But rather because in this wasteland, these threads are all that are here for you. When your vision clears, you realize in all of life, all of the complication, all of the incomprehensibility, there are only a few things that seem real, but they don't matter. But because these are the only things that seem real, for some reason, your only choice is either to engage with them or not to engage with them. And either way, it doesn't really matter, but what else is there for you to do? These are things like faith, like trying to understand the above and the below, trying to get to know your god, your rotten Fujo bitch god. It doesn't do anything for you, but what else is there for you to do? You want to understand human beings. You've realized knowing human beings doesn't change anything, doesn't do anything for you, even on the smallest levels, and you're most concerned with these highest or ultimate levels, you're most concerned with the cliff, certainly doesn't do anything on that front, but you do it anyway, because that's one of the only things that feels real, even though it isn't. And this is all there is for you. This is your existence. You are in a wasteland, and there are a few threads here and there you could pull, and you pull them because you trust the feeling that you should be pulling them, even though it doesn't matter. Once again, it's the feeling you trust, realer than real, even in the wasteland. And our understanding of this situation keeps evolving. If we can assume, as above, so below, if we can assume our gods feel these instincts the same way we feel them, and maybe parts of these instincts are communications to or from our gods or between us and our gods, but if our gods are feeling them too, then this is not one of those, okay, so above our gods are like super gods that now all of a sudden those are the ones who imbue these instincts with the meaning. And what I'm saying is, if our gods are not the ones, maybe we share our instincts, know each other in this way, but they are not the ones imbuing our instincts, our righteousness, with that strange meaning. And I hate that word meaning, so let's say faith beyond faith, a complete, incomprehensible irrationality. As in, within this wasteland, you, before you even do it, you know pulling a thread won't accomplish anything. Why do you do it anyway? What is this thing that's calling you that you, in all likelihood, share with your God? Why is that? If the divide between this wasteland of existence and the void is maybe not impassable, event horizon like, then why does this feel so important on this side of things, even though you know it doesn't mean anything? And in that, you'll be proven correct at every turn. It never means anything, but you still feel like it does. And there appears to be no rhyme or reason to these things. What is that? If it's not gods giving that instinct, that oomph, then what is it? And this is another thing. We didn't break off into the tangent a moment ago, because if we did, then I wouldn't have been able to finish the thought. It's so fucked up. What if, I mean, we look at these stellar objects and we think science, but what if these things are actually very clearly mystical events? Like a black hole. How do you see that and not worry? And I don't mean that on a scientific or mortality level, I mean in a cosmic sense. You know black holes exist, and that doesn't freak you out in any spiritual fashion. Anyway, maybe the cliff of death is not as impassable as we think it is, but if that's the case, then our conception of everything is all kinds of fucked up. Because our gods don't know what's over there. They're as freaked out about it as we are. I don't know. thinking about the void, to my eyes, there are two ways of looking at this. A, death is some kind of other dimension or other form. Well, it's not. Well, that's the thing, right? It's not another form of existence. It is not existence. And again, we've been talking about this for years and years and years. A and not A. Not A isn't B. Not A is just not A. We understand death to be not A. Okay, we know what it isn't. We have no idea what it is. In this first way of looking at things, whatever death is, it's so alien, it's impenetrable even to higher and lower powers. It's fucked up, right? We think about this. It's fucked up. The mind of God, the mind of your God, is, in fact, at least a little bit comprehensible. That's fucked up. More fucked up is that death and inevitability. You can go your entire life without even trying to know your God. Death and inevitability, a place we will be, is totally incomprehensible to us. And then there's the other way of looking at it, that death, non-existence, is nothing. And that's a possibility. That's, even if you look at it as a probability, or even as a certainty, that opens up more questions. Because in some ways, it's the same as A. This whole gods of death, or people going to the other side and coming back, I don't think there is anything to any of that. The sort of death I'm talking about, this total death, maybe there are afterlives. Maybe there are heavens and hells. But if those do exist, then they aren't total death. They are islands you have chosen or been chosen for to sit in, waiting for total death. And maybe gods are immortal, let's say. How long can you wait? Even if, let's say, you are immortal, how long can you go on knowing you exist in relation to this thing that is total death? How long can you do that? Not knowing, living in suspense, in confusion and anger. But anyway, let's say total death is absolute negation or nothing. It's a lot like the first way of looking at it, but in a different way, because that's equally incomprehensible to us. The incomprehensibility is the same, but that opens up another question of what is causing this totally irrational intangibility shit, if it's not God's doing it. It doesn't answer the question of why things have been set up in this way for us to look at this. For existence to be a wasteland that serves only to give you a place to be aware of this other thing. And then, of course, if you're still thinking about this in a very human way, who or what set all this up in the first place and why? But see, that's part of the original question. It seems clearer and clearer that this total death is the thing, it is the reason, but it is totally incomprehensible. The only question you can ask is why, and there's no way for you on this side to answer it. What is it? All these bubbles and not a drop to drink? So many possibilities, and nothing except death that even might begin to solve this. And we arrive back at this place often, but it seems like every time we make a loop and end up back here, we have a new way of looking at the same thing. You are not supposed to know. You are supposed to want to know and to try to know and to fail. Always. Why? You can't help but ask why. And so we pull the thread further. This won't get us anywhere, but what else are we supposed to do? It's the only thing that feels like it matters, even though you know it doesn't. And it really makes you wonder if you're supposed to be going through all this to reach a point you're willing to call the bluff. Because there's nothing fun or noble about all this. It's futile. It is futility. That's another thing I don't understand in all this. It just corrupted some of my audio, so I need to rethink and put all this back together. Why frame all this like you're supposed to figure something out, or at least to want to figure something out, knowing full well you can't, won't, never will, and making death inevitable the only true answer, if you can call it an answer, something you don't need to work for at all. We talked about loops before. A new way of looking at things here. Now, when we're thinking about futility and pointlessness and all of this shit, that is not a pained thing. It's not a scream or a rage against the dying of the light shit. This isn't a fight. This isn't a struggle. This is a reality. Whatever you think about it or however you feel about it, it doesn't matter. This is the circumstance. And thinking about futility now, seeing what we have seen, you've accepted there's nothing that can be done about it, or rather, if things are set up in this fashion, then they're supposed to be, and you're supposed to experience them this way. There is a dry feeling of, why is this set up like this? Why make everything so futile? Why are you putting us through this? Whatever or whoever you would be in this example. What's the point of dragging it out like this? I guess that's the next thing we'll be thinking about. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.